Hey guys, and welcome back. A couple of months ago I picked up this bag used, very much used, for a couple of euros only at a flea market, thinking that I could restore it. It's what appears to be an old-fashioned crocodile leather bag, and it's got some clear issues here with it, where the crocodile leather has become brittle and has torn, and it's got a very interesting opening mechanism system here. It's a nice old-fashioned bag, and I think this is goatskin leather on the inside, and it's got lots of charm and characteristics that make it really unique, and it does have some issues though. As you can see, a lot of the fixtures here have damaged the leather quite substantially, and this would need to be cleaned out. I'd have to take off the whole closing mechanism here, figure out how to basically fix this bit here, which I don't know how I'd be able to do it because I don't have any of the same leather. So after a few months of sitting around in my shop and not actually getting around to doing it, I decided the best thing I probably could do with this is try and take it apart and just basically recuperate the leather here and see if I can make a nice wallet out of this, or at least a nice card holder out of it. If at any moment you feel like you want to help support me and my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you have already done that, a like and a comment really go a very long way. Also, I'll leave the link to the blog post where you can find the pattern down below in the description of this video, so if you want to download the pattern and make your own, feel free to go ahead and do that. I have one small indication here about the date. There is a sentence here saying ces crédits se montrent dans loi des finances à 30 milliards contre 36,9 en 1950, in 1950. So basically this bag, my guess is, would have been early 50s, if not maybe early 60s, but no later than that. So this bag is probably at least 60 years old, if not more. So yeah, it's an interesting little piece of history here. Hopefully I can give it a second life. This is the bottom panel, and very interestingly, it looks like they've lined it with another piece of leather here, which I have no idea what this is. It looks like it's a fake grain pattern on a very malleable leather, which feels like goatskin leather, but hard to tell what it is. But yeah, let's see if we can unpeel this. Oh yeah, it's coming off straight away. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Good. Is that got some kind of writing? Is that writing? Is that just my imagination trying to read into something? I don't know. Anyhow, bin. That's going to be nice. That could be a nice bracelet cover or something. Watch strap, maybe. Huh. Keep this for later. Before I can actually use this skin, I want to go ahead and make sure it's as soft and pliable and malleable as anything. So I'm going to be using Saphir Reptan here, which is a cream made specifically for reptile skins and exotic skins. It's basically a lot like my Renovateur in a sense, but it has some more, I believe it's got more alcohols and stuff in it to be able to draw in the oils through the thick scales. I'll be using a glove, of course, and I'll be using what they call a chamois, or just a small soft cloth to be able to massage it all in. I've given my pieces a 5 to 10 minute period of time to dry out a bit, and we can now get rid of the excess. So you'll want to be careful rubbing it gently now, because it's gone quite sticky on the surface and the waxes have started to harden. But already it feels more supple. And this process is bringing a lot of waxes back to the surface and giving it a nice shine anyway, so it's all good. That is looking much nicer. Clearly it's been nourished. The back side still feels very dry and brittle, but we'll be addressing that in a second by adding a second layer of leather on the back side, and you'll see why. But yeah, that is looking very nice, and it feels... This is my first time working with crocodile skin, and it certainly feels gorgeous. It's got some imperfections here. Don't know if the camera's picking it up. I think the camera is just picking it up. It's got some imperfections there. It's got something here happening to it, which I'm not sure the camera gets it. It's got a spill of something here. But these are minor details. Overall, this is a nice little piece which I'll be able to reuse. This is Buttero leather by the Conceria Walpier, and I'm going to be using this as the backing to my different pieces of leather and also as the top card holder in my build. There we go, I have all my pieces cut out. Now you'll notice that the top pocket here is not going to be backed with any of the crocodile skin, so I want to be able to keep the red accent there, so that should be interesting. But for all the others, I'm going to go ahead and glue the different panels onto each other. Hopefully that will give a nice backing to this. It's going to be a bit thicker than I necessarily would like, but it's going to be a nice clean looking build at the end, at least I hope. I'm using a water-based glue, which will require me to leave it for a couple of minutes to dry before applying properly. Using a spatula, I'm removing any excess glue. That will avoid any excess buildups around the edges. While we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go ahead and take care of my internal pocket, or top pocket, as I called it in my pattern. I think I'm going to have it come down a bit further, because I want it to overlap underneath my other pocket, my front pocket, so I don't have to worry about doing this edge there, which wouldn't really be a... Actually, that's not going to be a problem. You know what, guys? The edge there isn't going to be a problem anyway, because I can burnish this quite easily, and because it's going to be so thick anyway, we want to try and avoid any extra thickness, so having it come down underneath is maybe not the best idea. Let's just do that. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and burnish these edges because it's vegetable tanned leather. I can actually do that. I won't be able to do it with the crocodile skin or crocodile leather, but on this one, because it's buttero leather, I can go ahead and burnish the edges to a nice sheen. Our pieces of leather are ready to be stuck together. So as you can see, it's dry, if slightly tacky to the touch. That's perfect on both sides. That's how it should be. Let's go ahead and stick them together. Now that everything's stuck together, we can go ahead and start cutting our pieces. Let's start with the back panel. Now just lay the pattern on top of the piece of leather you want to cut, line up the straight edge. In my case it's a steel ruler or aluminium, and using a rotary cutter I just like to go ahead and slowly cut off the excess. This should, in theory, I'm just checking that everything is nicely glued up on this side, because if it's glued up on this side, it's glued up on this side. That should give us a very nice clean edge to work with. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side as well. Now you do have a 5mm seam allowance, and this will allow you to be a bit more generous with your cuts, but I'm still going to try and be as precise as possible, just for the sake of giving myself as much play room as possible, play area as possible. Okay, not bad. That is looking quite stunning, and it feels really nice and sturdy in the hand. I'm just going to be sanding down very slightly these edges so they're not as sharp, and then we can go ahead and start applying basically the edge paint here to these edges. So I want to do the back panel top edge, which is indicated here, as well as the front pocket top edge. And I would normally have to do this, but we've already done the burnishing on this one, so I don't need to do anything there. So another good benefit about sanding the edges down is that it exposes a lot of these little fibers, and these are the fibers that the edge paint is going to be using to grab onto. So not only does it help cut out or round out some of those really harsh straight edges that we've created by cutting with the straight edge, but also it will help with getting a better adherence with the edge paint. To apply the edge paint, I'm going to be using a roller by Dream Factory, which is a really gorgeous brass roller with a precision little ball bearing inside, and it enables me to get this on very, very precisely. There we go, that's the first coat done. Let's let it dry, and we'll have to come back in a couple of hours to sand it down and do the next coat. This is by far the slowest part of the whole process, because you need to wait for it to properly dry before coming back to do another coat and then letting it dry again before you can actually do anything with that. While the first coat of edge paint is drying, we're going to go ahead and stitch up the top panel to the front panel. So all you have to do for this is line up your template, then line up the bottom of your top pocket with the indicated line on the template here. Go ahead and make sure it's all nice and straight. That looks good enough. Take your pricking irons, place them down. Make sure you're through. Okay. Now I'll be using 3.25mm spacing pricking irons from Crimson Hides here. They're really nice. They're the French style, which means it's slants instead of diamonds. 3.25 means that from the center of each tooth there is 3.25mm distance. This is a very classic distance. If you're starting off with leathercraft, I'd maybe say that 4mm is a bit more versatile and gets more stitching done. It does mean that you'll have more stitches to do, but it gives you a nice precise stitch. I am going to be using Maisie M50 thread, which is their 0.5mm thread, and this one is the MS085 colour, which is a nice deep dark red, which I think should look very nice. I might go for something a bit more red. I'll have a look and I'll tell you in a sec. I'm going to be stitching off camera, guys, simply because it's easier for me and not very interesting to show you. If you want, there are some amazing, fabulous tutorials about how to saddle stitch on YouTube. I'm not going to make one myself because it would be redundant. There really are some great tutorials out there. If you want to learn how to do some very simple but good looking saddle stitching, go ahead and check it out on YouTube. I'm sure you'll find more than what you're looking for, more than what you need, and plenty of great teachers, better teachers than I am for that kind of thing out there. Since I have a 5mm seam allowance, I've traced a line 8mm all around here, and I'm going to be skiving down here for several reasons. First of all, to reduce the thickness of it. Secondly, to be able to basically show some of those fibers underneath here so that my glue can really grab onto something. And hopefully in theory, the 5mm seam allowance plus 3mm that I've added for the 8mm line means that I will have still a small amount of glue all around once I've cut off the seam allowance, meaning that my piece will be nicely glued in with just the right amount of glue. Theoretically, if I do if I work properly and if I do this well. It's worked previously absolutely fine, so I've got no reason to believe that it won't work this way today as well. Let's go ahead and start skiving. As mentioned, you've got a 5mm seam allowance, so don't worry if your edges aren't perfect here. They will be in the end. Just make sure that you've skived down enough to expose those fibers and to give yourself plenty of room to be able to glue on the next piece. The first coat of edge paint is now dry, so we'll go ahead and sand it very slightly. This is some relatively coarse sandpaper, so I'm having to be very careful here. For my next coats, we're going to use a softer sandpaper or slightly higher grit sandpaper. The idea here is to remove practically all of it and try and build a straight platform upon which the next coat can come and rest. Okay, that feels about right. The edges are now nicely done on the top pocket or the front pocket, as well on the back panel. This is going to be now resting upon here, like so, and you can already tell the colour is quite interesting. There is one little thing I'm not too fond about, is the way the edge paint here has sort of like spilt onto the scales, and that's partly due to the fact that I'm not very good at edge painting yet, and also due to the fact that the scales had indented a bit, so maybe next time I should have cut not along the scale line here where the scales meet, just here, but instead right in the middle, because I believe this is where the line would have been, and that's where the paint is sort of like dipping into those little ridges. I'm not too sure how much I can do about that. Sanding doesn't seem to be working, and I'm worried about sanding too far. No, I'm not going to sand that. That's just going to be part of it. Too bad. The paint has just got into the ridges. I think that's something I have to learn for next time if I'm working with crocodile skin and I want to do painted edges, edge painting, then I have to cut between the ridges and not along the ridge. Anyhow, it's still looking good, and I'm really enjoying this mix of colour. That's going to be quite fabulous. So yeah, let's get moving. The glue is now dry, or at least tacky to the touch, so we can go ahead and start placing things down, gluing them to their final position. And the best part is placing down the bottom card slot, because this is when you start really getting an idea of what it's going to look like. Make sure you're placing it nice and snug up against the card slot, the top card slot. There we go. Ooh, that's looking good. Now this is going to need a shine because it's a bit dirty right now, but once I've finished I'm going to give it a nice buff, and hopefully that should make it look really nice. Bit of wax polish, and I am very happy with my colour choices here. Good, that's looking very nice. Let's go ahead and take over this edge now. So to do that, what you have to do is place your guide along your piece of leather, more or less in the right place. Not a big problem if it's not perfectly centered here, because the whole idea is that you have some excess material to cut off to make sure that it becomes perfectly centered as we go along later. So again, I like to use a round rotary tool. Hopla, there we go. And you have a perfect edge. Isn't that gorgeous? So this we can now go ahead and basically edge paint. Again, yeah, edge painting is one of the slowest things about this whole build. If you were using vegetable tanned leather, you wouldn't need to edge paint. You could just go ahead and burnish the leather instead, and that would take you a fraction of the time because you're not waiting for the paint to dry. But so far, this is looking very promising. This is the one we did previously, just to get an idea. That is one good looking little leather wallet here. I can't wait to see the final piece. Anyhow, one thing at a time, let's go ahead and paint that edge. Okay, I've put it on quite thick, but since it's the first layer, so I'll be sanding it down anyway. I don't mind it being a bit thicker than it should be. This way I'm sure it's going to cover up as much as possible of the slight. Basically, since I cut it nice and straight and level, it needs, you know, quite a bit to actually prepare that base layer for the next ones to be a bit more rounded and domed out. So hopefully this will be a good start. Let it dry and come back. I usually do my stitching line 3mm from the edge, but since I'm not going to be doing any edge creasing here, I'm going to actually stitch 2mm away from the edge and be very careful when pricking my stitching holes that I don't get too close or too far away for that matter. I'm using a simple little tool here just to mark down my line. There we go. You don't want to go too far down here as you'll be stitching along here, and you don't want to overlap too much. If in any doubt, use your guide, as this will give you an indication of where your next stitch will be. So yeah, just stop just before there. So as you can see, the side has been done now, and we are getting ready to assemble the two pieces. Now the next part is going to be tracing out a zone that will be skived down in order to then glue these pieces of leather together. And yeah, once it's all glued up, we can go ahead and cut the different areas off, or cut the different sides nice and square, nice and neat, and go ahead and finish up the piece. So just as I did previously, I am scribing a line 8mm down the sides here of my piece of leather. That is 5mm of seam allowance plus 3mm that are going to be glued together, and this will give me a good line that I can skive from, or skive to, depending on how you want to see things, and then I can glue things together. By the way guys, have you noticed how bad I am at skiving? Well, I try and practice from time to time, but it's just one of those skills that takes so long to actually master. It's ridiculously hard. If you have any tips, I'd love to hear them in the comments. When you're ready to glue, simply line up the two edges, make sure everything is nice and straight there, and go ahead and glue. At this point, don't worry if any of your edges are not straight, because this will be corrected in the next step. Just make sure that the top edge is nice and straight. Before doing anything else, I would recommend leaving this at least 24 hours if you can, just to make sure all the glue sets nicely. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and carry on anyway. I'll just give us a few minutes to settle, but I really would recommend waiting much longer. The next step is going to be placing your paper template on top of your piece, making sure that you line up that top edge really nicely, because that's going to be your guide for the next few steps. Go ahead and place your ruler nice and firmly along the cut edge here, which is basically to take away the seam allowance. And this is when you're going to get your very nice finished edges. Get a sharp knife or rotary tool and cut away. There we go. And that should leave you with a gorgeous, gorgeous edge. And indeed it has. Do this for all three sides and you should be ready to go. Due to the thickness of the leather, in my case my final cut didn't turn out to be as straight as I'd like it here. It doesn't really show up on camera much, but it's not as straight as I'd like, so all I need to do is take a bit of sandpaper, put it on a flat surface and go ahead and gently sand that nice and flush and nice and flat. Now that it's nice and flat, I can go ahead and prep my corners, my edges here, for my edge paint. I've given my piece 4 different coats of edge painting and let it dry thoroughly between each coat, sanded it down slightly and added some more. Because of the thickness here, you can still just about see the different ridges in the different layers of leather, but that's fine. We're going to give it a nice last sand with some 400 grit sandpaper and then polish it off. This is just a question of trying to make it look as neat as possible, but I'm not going to go ahead and do a 5th coat simply because I don't really want to spend that much extra time working on it. I just want to make it look nice enough and presentable enough, as I've spent long enough working this already. That's not bad at all. Okay, next step is to go ahead and apply some beeswax gently onto the edges here. This will help protect it and also give it a nice shine. I'm using a 100% cotton glove here, which I'm not wearing of course, I'm just using it as a small burnishing cloth. And the idea here is just to get some friction going, to get some heat and to melt those waxes all along that surface. This will also give the edge coat a nice last buff and hopefully get it as even as possible. That's looking good. Just in case you're wondering, this is the edge paint I'm using. It's from Déco, which is the supplier that I use here in France for everything. And having tested a few different edge paints, this is actually really nice stuff. It's their home brand, but it works very, very well. Now, it does take a lot of coats to get on, but that's the same for all edge paints. But yeah, if you're in Europe, in France at least, and Europe as well, or even internationally, they do ship everywhere, go and check them out. They've got some really cool stuff. Now, all that's left is to punch my holes all along these 3 edges here and go ahead and stitch it up, which of course I'll do off camera. And there you go, all nicely stitched up and finished. Although I say finished, but I am going to apply a last little coat of Reptan just to make sure that my crocodile here is as nourished and polished as can be. And to finish it off, I'm going to be adding 1 quick layer of Saphir Pâte de Luxe. This is a very common wax that you can find, a relatively hard wax, and it will give us hopefully a nice shine and also help protect it. And I will also be doing this on the edges, as this will also protect the edges and help give them a nice shine. So the way you want to do it is just apply a thin layer all around your piece, let it dry for a couple of minutes and come and buff off the excess. And directly, instantly, you can see the luscious dark red is coming back to the surface on those edges, and that's simply due to the waxes helping giving it a nice shine. There you have it guys, it's all finished up, nicely polished, and it's looking absolutely gorgeous, or at least to my eyes it is. I mean, yeah, sure, there are some issues here with the edge paint, but apart from that, I feel like I did a very good job getting the edge paint on, and the nice gorgeous buttero lining in there looks fabulous. Now, I'm not sure how well the camera is able to show that lining, but that buttero leather lining gives it an absolutely gorgeous finish all around, whether it's on the outside, on the inside. I just really love the look on this, and I really am chuffed with the way this leather managed to come back from where it was. Now, admittedly, you can still see if you look closely that it's an old leather, and yes, it's been used and worn out in areas, but overall you are really able to bring it back to something that looks quite fascinating and feels really nice, and hopefully this will get many more years of use out of it. As always, guys, I'd like to thank you for being here today with me. I would love to hear your comments in the comment section below. Please drop me a line letting me know what you think of this build. If you have any tips for using alligator skin or crocodile skin for my future builds, or just let me know what you think of this one. I'd love to hear all of that down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, don't forget that hitting the subscribe button really goes a long way in helping me grow and provide more content to you guys. And if you're already subscribed to the channel, don't forget that, again, liking this video and leaving a comment also do a great job in helping me out. Thanks a ton for being here, guys. Thanks a ton for watching. Hopefully you've learned something, hopefully you've enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you very soon for some more leathercraft.